in the way I act, the way the friends that I collect around me are givers, are those kinds of people who reach out to others. And suddenly, I am, part of this huge community of people who act a certain way, who give a certain way. And I don't feel like I'm the victim of that anymore. I'm actually feeling like I am,
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
those are the two most powerful words that a human being can utter, are the voice of creation, I am.
Yes, certainly. And what comes after that, and what you will believe about yourself, and we touched on this briefly. And I just want to cover this really quick about feedback, because you talk through the book about how, everything is feedback if we're willing to look at it that way. And we can look at our lives and see what's going on by the feedback we're getting. But then there's also the other side of that, where there's random universal chaos, let's say, right? That there's things that happen in the world that, so how do we distinguish between our own feedback and what maybe some of that randomness / chaos that happens in the world?
Well, we use the story of there's always a CNN reporter who goes to, the town that got hit by a tornado. And, they interview two families. On one side of the street, there's one family, they're just in tears. We've lost everything, we'll never be able to make it, and they're just, crying and things like that. And they go down the street and they interview another family, and the mother's stroking the son's head. And she said, we're so lucky we lost our house, but we're safe.
Yeah.
And so those random acts, those things that happen around us, We don't deny that, but using ourselves as a feedback barometer and saying, how I react to that is going to be a reflection back to me, of who I am, so, when I am a certain way in a disaster and my son sees me being that way, the feedback I get from him is, Dad, I want to be like you, and we also talk about feedback is neutral. Feedback doesn't have a valence, positive or negative, to it. Feedback is just reading the tea leaves that are in front of you and saying, oh, okay, that didn't work, that did work. So is my reaction to the tornado, or is my reaction to an earthquake or the flood or whatever, random things that happen, is that a source for feedback that reinforces my path? Or is it a source of feedback that says, ooh, that's not working too well?
Yeah.
And one thing I'll just mention too is, having just lost a child, I've had now an opportunity, a blessed opportunity to meet so many parents who've lost children. And every time I talk to a parent, they'll say, you can't tell me that I sourced that. You can't tell me that I was meant to lose a child. But what I do say in response to that is, yes, but can you find the gratitude in it? Because when my son passed, I had 4 beautiful days with him, and I was overwhelmed with gratitude. Yes, I felt grief, and yes, it was, I was in trauma and all the things, but I also felt immense gratitude for the NICU, for the doctors, for the nurses, for our community that came out en masse to support us. Yeah. And in those moments of chaos, when that's happening to you, if you can find the kernel of gratitude in it, you will be able to source the next blessing in your life. Right. I don't know if that answers the question, but
it does. I had a similar experience after my dad, because, obviously I didn't source that. However, my response to this and the way I've changed, and I see things differently now. And I feel like, I honestly feel like that's what led to my boyfriend and I talking about getting married, because it was almost like I was broken so far open that, like, all the hangups, all of the resistance, all of the internal fighting I had going on, I had nothing left for that. It was just done. It was gone. And that left me with the true me to be able to, what do you really want? I mean, this is it, right? This is life. And I don't know if you guys remember that show, One Day at a Time, but that song keeps playing in my head. Like, this is it. This is life, the one you get. So go and have a ball. Right. And that's what keeps playing in my head when I think of this, because this is it. I mean, yes, I'm still dealing with the grief. Yes, I'm all of the things, but I'm also allowing it to change me in a way that is for the positive, change me in a way that, that is a positive way to move forward, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a special relationship between dads and daughters, and it's special enough that it could include your relationship between you and your boyfriend, and
Yeah.
when your father died, part of that bond was broken that freed you to
Yeah.
be Sloan, to be who you are alone. There's again a kernel of gratitude in there where you say, thank you, Dad, for everything you did. I got a call at 10 o'clock last night that one of my good friends just died last night.
Sorry to hear that. Yeah.
The one person, the only phone call I was able to make on 9/11 was to Bill.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't even call my wife. I mean, the phones were so jammed. But I did get a call through to him, and he and I talked through our experience that we were having that day. I'll never forget that moment. That conversation that I had with my friend Bill, who last night succumbed to pancreatic cancer and was no longer with us. So yes, am I in grief today? Yeah, absolutely. I'm getting to the age where, I'm losing people,
Right.
I'm the sole survivor. I'm standing still, but I'm also grateful for everything that each of those people has given me.
Yeah.
And so, again, I always look at that grief that we feel as love that we have that we now no longer have an outlet for, so, what grief feels like is, what do I do?
Yeah.
I love that person so much. I love my dad so much. What do I do with this love?
Yeah. Yeah. It's a good way to think of it too, because it's confusing also, I think.
Yeah. We look at it as not as I'm alone, but as, what's really happening here is I don't have an outlet for a chunk of love that I had, for this person. Then I can take that love and I can give it to Candace or to Sloan or to my wife or to my children, or to my grandchildren. I can take that same love and say, this belongs to Bill, but I'm giving it to you now. I say that in my head. I don't say that to them. I have only now, to live. And another key kernel of what transformation is all about is getting us. It is an emotional intelligence program that we work with. And the core of emotional intelligence is really being present to the experience of the experience. We have emotions, we have experiences, but as soon as we have them, our brain starts thinking about the experience, making up an interpretation about the experience, about the feeling, and it immediately pulls us out of the experience. Yeah. Emotional intelligence is the ability to stay present to the experience of the experience, to actually be here now with you, and not worrying about what's for lunch or what's next, right, or whatever. That's the essence of living in the now, and being able to experience another person, each person one at a time.
Yeah. We're coming up on the end of our time. I've absolutely loved this conversation. This has been, again, your book is amazing. I want to thank you both for joining us and sharing your stories and just talking through this with us, because this is so important. It is why I do this show, to have these types of conversations. And so it's so meaningful to me as well. So I want to thank you for that. Before we close out today, what do you hope the listeners take away after reading your book? Maybe what they learn, what they take away. What's your hope that they come away with from your book?
My intention, my declaration is that those who read our book will realize that whatever I'm facing right now, there is a way. There is a way. There's a path. There's a path forward for me, whatever that is. And that there are plenty of tools that you can put in your toolbox to get there. And these are some of those tools that supported Chris and I in getting through our path over and over and over again. But in those moments of darkness, when you feel backed into a corner, when you feel stuck, there is a path. And that's my intention for this book.
Yeah.
Yeah, mine's very similar. And that is it, like everybody everywhere wants, a 6-pack abs with 15 seconds worth of workout. It's like,
right.
Just do one thing a day and you'll have a perfect body. Everybody wants the breakthrough of living a fully empowered life without the cost, without the work. And if there's one thing, it's like none of these things are negative. There, we interpret all these trials and tribulations as negative. What if we saw them as just the barrier that we're breaking through to get to the full manifestation of ourselves? So we say that there's no breakthrough without a breakdown first. What has to break down is the way that you have it made up, that the world's going to roll over and play dead just because I say so.
Right.
Wrong.
Right.
But that, when you experience all these things, to say yes to them, accept them, embrace them. And that's the way through. It's why we have that subtitle is the only way out is through.
Yeah.
We wish it to be differently. I know we all do, but it isn't.
No, and in that resistance to it, that causes a lot of pain, and
it persists, right?
Right, exactly. And so the only way out is through. So again, Chris and Candace, I want to thank you for joining us today. Can you tell the listeners how they can find out more about you and the work that you do? And Candace, I'll start with you.
We are very involved with an emotional intelligence training program, which is called Next Level. So Next Level Trainings, feel free to check it out, and you can come and you can go through as a student with us. And then obviously, please read the book, Typhoon Honey, The Only Way Out is Through. So essentially the book is what we teach every single day in writing. So that would be my request.
Awesome.
We're both available on LinkedIn and all the social media kinds of sources that you can find. So you can just look up Candace Ogren or Chris Gorell and find out more about us on our own personal websites or on Next Level. What else would I say other than, there's so many more pieces to this that get a chance to, pick up the book. It's available on Amazon.com and BarnesandNoble.com. Pick up the book, pass it on to friends. It's now available in hardback, so you can give it as Christmas presents and things like that. But yeah, read the book and take notes. One of the hard things about writing a book is you have to stop somewhere.
Yeah.
And that was the hard part for us, is where do we stop? Because there's so much more that we do, and there's so much more available. So, get involved in it, come and join us. It's a great party.
Yeah, well, that's how I felt about this interview. Where do I stop with my questions? Because I had so many. But again, I'll put the links in the show notes for the listeners so they can check that out. So thank you again for joining me today. This has been an excellent conversation. I just loved every minute of it.
Thanks, Sloan.
Thank you so much, Sloan.
Right.
You've been listening to the Create What You Speak podcast, brought to you by webtalkradio.net. You can also hear this podcast on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, and your favorite podcasting platform. I'm Sloan Fremont, and I hope you'll join me for the next episode of the Create What You Speak podcast, where we will continue to free our minds, expand our consciousness, and untangle those thoughts and patterns that keep us from living the life we desire. Check out my website, sloanfremont.com, to learn more.